For this shading project, we're going to be using some basic supplies. Shading pencil, sharpener, a soft bristled brush will help you to clean away eraser refuse or eraser poo without creating smudges, and magazine paper will help you to stop your hand from creating smudges. This shading exercise is required to have zero smudging. We are not going to use the smudging technique for this shading exercise. Smudging is a technique. However, it can cause some problems. One problem it causes is that it's hard to control. So you get shadows, smudges, where you don't want them to be, like the number 1 whites. Every good shaded project has the white of the page left behind. Smudging also kind of destroys your infinite grays. You should have that nice blending from dark to light, and smudging kind of makes it all one gray. The best way to get smooth shading is with a sharp pencil and with patience. That's a whole different video. Now, when shading, you will see pencil lines. That's okay. It's good that your drawing looks like a drawing. If we wanted photos, we'd take pictures. Now, some people have a tendency to shade in patterns, as you can see right here. Shade a little section, move over, shade another little section, move over, shade another little section. This creates little overlapping lines, as you can see here. The overlapping lines are not usually what people want. So, in order to prevent those lines, what you need to do is shade a little bit more randomly. Don't shade in a pattern. Shade kind of all over the place to avoid having those little overlaps. I have eraser refuse. My soft brush helps me get rid of that without smudging. Now, with my nice sharp pencil, I can go back to my shading. And here's another thing really not to do. If you take the side of your pencil and shade, see how it creates that really bumpy, textured kind of look? What's happening is your side of your pencil is hitting the texture of the paper and showing a little bit more. So, by using a sharper point and not the side of your pencil, again, you can get smoother shadows. Now, as you can see, I'm shading a little bit to the right, and then a little bit to the left, and then a little bit back to the middle, and then to the right, and then up, and then down. By going over and over different areas, and by not creating a pattern, I can create a smoother area of shading. Also, notice that I'm going one direction with my shading. I'm kind of staying with that slight angle of the shadow itself. Now, it is okay though if you need to change your direction slightly to maybe work on an edge. As I work my way sideways, I don't want to just color into my picture, so it would be kind of rough to get that edge right there on the picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade along with the picture. Sorry, it's a little blurry here. It is okay to change your direction as long as you blend that into the other shadows that you have. If you can tell that you're going two drastically different directions, that's whenever it doesn't look quite so good. So as long as you're careful with it and blending it, you definitely can do that. Now I'm going to continue this shadow down below my picture first. Now the reason that I chose that shadow first was not because it was the easiest shadow, but because I'm right-handed. And as a right-hander, I don't want to have to constantly have my hand on top of shadows while I'm trying to shade the rest of it. So if I work from the left to the right, I am avoiding some of that time of having my hand on top of the shadows. If you are a left-hander, start from the right and work your way to the left. That actually helps out quite a bit when it comes to preventing smudging. Again, in this particular project, no smudging is allowed. If you smudge, you have to erase it and fix it. You cannot smudge without lowering your grade on this project. Now, one thing to note is that I don't draw a whole lot of my details out before I start shading. A lot of my details are created with the shadows themselves. I don't spend time drawing all of them because I can just create them with the shadows. In order to get those details, it is important for you to look at your reference often. Have it open next to you. Have it zoomed in. Look at the details. That's the only way you can get details in a picture, is if you start looking at the details. Now, I tend to go put in some smoother shadows first, and then go back and add little bits and little shadows. Now, one thing that I can do to help out with creating areas of smoothness and areas of shadows is to follow my shape. The belly of this picture is curved, so putting a little bit of a curve on my shadow is something that can help it to look better. One nice thing is, if you are shading, your hand creates a natural curve to it. Now, if I would right now try to shade a curve going the opposite direction, that would be very awkward and wouldn't be as smooth. So what I would do is I would turn the artwork to again use that curve of my hand. So as I'm working my way across, I'm getting a little bit beyond where is comfortable for my hand to hit that curve. So I'm going to turn my artwork so that I can use that comfortable curve of my hand once again. It's a trick, it's a tip, it's something to help your shading to not only be better, but be easier. Now I'm reaching a part that is going to be left white. Every good shaded drawing ranges from number 10, the blackest your pencil can get, to number 1, the white of the page. And the only way to have nice, pretty, clean whites is to simply not shade where you want to leave the whites. Do not try to shade and then erase where your whites are. They'll never get back pure white. So you have to plan where those whites are and simply not touch them. Now, some people have trouble blending to white, especially with a nice shading pencil. It can be tough to get those really, really light shadows. I do have a trick for you. When you hold your pencil in your hand, the back of the pencil rests on your hand itself. If, however, as you can see, rests on your hand, right? When it's like that, the weight of your hand is on the point. Now, if you hold the pencil at the end, like you just saw, then just the weight of the pencil is on the point. And that can help you to get some really, really, really nice light shadows that will help you blend out to those number ones. After creating this nice smooth belly of that little picture, I'm going to go back and add some of the little details that are on it. Less is more. Do not try to outline everything that you think is there. Just put little indications, little suggestions of where those details are. Those suggestions are so much prettier than if you try to outline everything. If you outline everything, it looks cartoony, it looks fake, it looks flat, and it's not nearly as pretty. So again, just go and put some of those little hints of the designs on that picture. And some of them are just random little marks, but that makes it look like it has the details that the original picture has. Again, the only way to make sure that you have a lighter area is to not shade there. Along the rim of this little picture, there is a bright edge. There is a little thickness that shows. So notice I am leaving a gap. By leaving a gap, I create that little brightness. Now on the inside of the picture, I start having some of my nice number 10 darks. The best way to get those is to put a little bit more pressure on your pencil, yes, but also to layer them. It's really easy to darken. It is not so easy to lighten up if something gets too dark. So do it gradually. Make sure that you know where those nice dark shadows are before you really go for it and start coloring in. Now, we are using cardstock, which is a little bit thicker than standard paper, so we won't have to deal with warping quite so much. But if you do work on regular paper, the more you press, the more your paper will warp. It needs to be layered to prevent that warping. Put a little pressure at a time, layer on top of the same spot over and over, and that will help you to prevent warping. Now to do this curve, that is the opposite of my hand curve. So this is awkward to do. So I will flip that drawing over. I will flip it around so I can use the curve of my hand to start filling in some of those shadows. Now it becomes very important for my magazine paper to stay under my hand right here. Now if your magazine paper is under your hand, but you're moving the magazine paper, it is still going to smudge. You have to keep the magazine paper still. The reason we use magazine paper is because it has a glossy coating. That glossy coating creates less friction and therefore less smudging. But notice that magazine paper is staying still while my hand moves. If the magazine paper moves, it will still move. I had a student one time create a glove out of a magazine paper. actually wrapped it around, taped it around their hand, and didn't understand why it was still smudging. It's because the whole thing was moving and creating friction on top of all that graphite and pushing it around, and therefore obviously still smudging. Have to hold it still to prevent that smudging. Now for this inner section of the picture, I kind of did the whole thing with somewhat smooth shading. There's some banding of darks and lights just to show the curve of things, but kept it pretty smooth. Now the little splotches that you see in the reference, I'm going to go back and add afterward. I don't need to add them as I go. I can put them in after I get my smooth shading taken care of. And you can see all I'm doing is going back into the areas that I've shaded and just adding some little splotchy shadows to create that old silver looking picture. Now, even though the flowers look white, they're not pure white. They're little shadows inside of them. Very light shadows, but still shading there. Very few things are ever just one value. Very few things are ever just one color. And the more variety and the more detail you can put, even in abstractions, usually the better things look. So pay attention to where all those little shadows are, where those little details are, and your artwork will improve. The lip of the picture is a bit rougher than other parts of it. It doesn't look as smooth. So instead of making sure that all my pencil lines are nice and smooth, I'm kind of keeping it a little choppier. I'm creating a texture. That texture will help me to give the look of the picture a little bit closer to the original. Again, notice me turning that artwork around so that I can angle my pencil a little bit more comfortably. It doesn't pay to fight against what's comfortable in your hand. Mostly done the little flowers and the picture and the cast shadow. But there is a background shadow that will help the composition of my artwork. So I want to make sure to put it there. So I just went and put a very light little guideline to kind of show me where those shadows are. And there's a little bit over there on the left too behind the picture. And then I'm going to work on those shadows very similarly to what I did the first time, just kind of following that angle of the actual shadow itself and just doing some fill-in work. Fill-in work is not too exciting, but it can help a composition tremendously. Now, this exercise, these values, these little tips and tricks are to all help you to improve your shading. Even if you don't like black and white artwork, this is very handy to help you learn some of the things that you need to learn that can help you with color. Good blending and good pencil work is definitely something that can help you with other styles of art as well. Mostly though, the big, huge skill that you need for any of this stuff is knowing how to see. I'm going to use my ID tag here to kind of stop my shadow before it hits that pretty little curved handle. Just another way that I can take care of my edges without causing too many problems. And I just shift my ID, shade a little bit more, shift my ID, and shade a little bit more. And it takes care of that little edge for me without having to mess up the shading I already had. But like I was saying, what you're really learning is how to see. Learning how to see is a giant art skill. If you can't see the value changes, if you can't see where details are, if you can't see where highlights are, there's no way that you can put them into an artwork. But the more you practice seeing that variety, the better of an artist you'll be. Whether it's seeing all the different colors for a color artwork or painting, whether it's seeing all the little details that are in an object or in a shape to bring out the variety in it, or whether it's just to see where things are dark and where things are light. Because there are illusions that happen, and we think things should look a certain way, but they really don't. So we have to practice seeing what is actually there. Now, in the video, it looks like I'm shading with the side of my pencil. And for this background, I'm slightly on the side, but not all the way on the side. It helps with fill-in work, goes a little bit more quickly, and I'm still able to get a nice shadow for that background. There's not as much detail in that background, so I don't have to quite spend this much time on it, and that's really kind of nice. Now, hopefully, with the practice with this little artwork, this will help you to see what a quality artwork should look like. Quality is what we are focusing on in this class. Sure, we're practicing creativity, we're practicing ideas, we're practicing techniques and skills, but we need to make sure that we are pushing the quality of all these things instead of just good enough artwork. Good enough artwork is a C. What? If you think about what grades represent, a C is average. So, a C is good enough. It does what it needs to, but it doesn't really do it fabulously. Now, a B is above average. So you're looking at something and go, yeah, I like that. That's pretty good. An A is exceptional. When you see an A work, you should go, wow, look at that. That's amazing. I didn't realize that they could do that. That's A work. If you look at something and just go, that's good enough, you're looking at C work. Now, if you look at something and you go, well, I wonder what happened here, you might be going a little bit lower than the C's, but hopefully we don't have to deal with that in this particular class. I hope that this little video has helped you to see some good techniques for shading that can help out your art, and I hope that the practice that we have on this little exercise can help you to improve your art so that we can progress as artists with our skills and our techniques.